So your test is going to be Friday, bless you. So forgive me for sitting down, but there's some honor students in 6th hour honor students that went on a field trip. And a bunch of kids here are missing, so some kids asked me if I could just record it and stick it on Edmodo. So that's why I'm sitting down, so forgive me. All right, so your notes are test answers. If I do my job right and you do your job right, your notes should be the same as my answer key, right? The whole bunch of stuff I'm going to tell you, it's not in your book, it's not anything you read. So laser focus on the notes. Okay, the history of the Russian Revolution, this is one of the biggest events of the 20th century. One reason is just pure geography. If you look up here, at this time, Russia is 1/6 of planet Earth. All the land in the world, 1/6 of it is Russia. What do you notice about the map? It's a little different than, the Soviet bloc, after the fall of communism, Russia got a little smaller. But if you notice, look at Alaska. You see Alaska? Do you guys know it used to be Russia? So they had more square miles easily than any country in the world, more than some continents. So 1/6 of planet Earth is Russia. Even to this day, they don't even know how to categorize it. Is it part of Europe? Is it part of Asia? It's in both. So I didn't have you guys when we went over World War I. I'll catch you up after the break. But Russia, during World War I, they never should have been in World War I because they were on the verge of a revolution and a civil war. They had no business even fighting in World War I. They were on the Allies. Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov, V.I. Lenin. You guys remember doing a paper on him? Bald guy, goatee. He's going to be the leader of the Russian Revolution. He hates the Tsars. He hates the Romanovs. He's in Switzerland. He got sent into exile. He's going to miss his own revolution. Guess what country helps him get back to Russia? Germany. What's the irony there? I know I didn't have you guys for World War I. Russia's at war with Germany in World War I. Germany's leading the Central Powers. Why would Germany help Lenin get back into Russia? Anybody want to guess? Did you come across it in your research? Why in the heck would Germany help their enemy, the Russians? Because the deal was, we'll get you in, bro. You get the Romanovs out. You take over with the Bolsheviks, but you immediately pull Russia out of this war. That was Germany's interest. We can get the biggest player on the Allies, the Russians, we can get them out of the war. So it's a smart move by Germany. Then who replaces Russia? The United States. The United States comes in 1917, war's over in 1918. So the Germans get Lenin back into the country. Now this whole Tsar thing, I want you to understand what a Tsar was. It's a little different. You're going to see some differences and some similarities. Now, first of all, the spelling. I got a lot of Russian. I think Russian history is fascinating. Russian history, Russian literature, classical Russian music, chess. Anybody here play chess? Russians are excellent chess players. They're very passionate about everything they do. Chess, their music. I've read a lot of this stuff, and this word here, Tsar, it's acceptable being spelled both ways. You might read one book as T-S-A-R. You might see it on the online articles, C-Z-A-R. Either one's acceptable. Does anybody want to take a guess of where Tsar comes from? Especially if you look at this spelling right here. Close. What's it look like? An old emperor. Caesar. Very good. Caesar. It comes from Caesar. Emperor. Total ruler. The Tsar had total authority. He had no Congress, no House of Representatives, no Senate, like the Greeks or the Romans. He called the shots. He answered to no one. Now this can be dangerous. And another difference with the Tsar. Okay, the Romanovs ruled Russia for 300 years. The Romanov family ruled for 300 years. It was a dynasty. Good for them, not that great for Russia. People didn't pray in Russia. They were known for agriculture, peasants, uneducated peasants, right? They didn't pray for the Tsar. They prayed to the Tsar. He was a divine figure. He was believed to be appointed by God. So you could not question him. So you didn't pray for the Tsar. Like when Kennedy got shot, St. Gabe's, all the churches down here, the only Catholic president we ever had, churches are filled praying for him. Word came down, he died. They prayed for President Kennedy when he got shot. In Russia, you prayed to the Tsar. He was a divine figure. Ivan the Terrible, the first Tsar, was a horrible, horrible human being. When he was a kid, he would stand up and climb up to the top of a tower, and he would drop puppies off the edge. And nowadays, what is that? That's signs of what? Ever watch any documentaries on serial killers? Sociopath. They start by hurting animals, killing animals. This guy was nuts. And Ivan the Terrible, he definitely earned the nickname. But if you can fool people, it works. And this is why you want to study history. It's not just about facts and dates, which is what I'm going to get into. When I was at St. Gabe's in 1976 on a Sunday morning mass, we went every Sunday. Excuse me, my parents, we met my grandparents, my nunnu, aunts and uncles. I lived on Casper, they lived on Cahalan. We went to St. Gabe's, it was our family church. Went to school there when it was a Catholic school. And the priest said something one time, and I was just a dumb little kid, but it made me think. He told everybody, all your heartaches and your sorrows, don't worry. You'll get your reward in... Where will you be rewarded? God will reward you in heaven. So if your life sucks now, it's okay. You'll be rewarded in heaven. Now, is that true or not? Who knows? But if you get people to believe it, so I can have a crap life right now, but it's okay. So you can convince people not to worry too much about how much their life sucks right now. Russia was agricultural farmers. They were known for being poor farmers, and I'm talking real hard poverty. There's two social classes in Russia, serfs and nobles. Write that down. And it's not serfs, S-U-R-F, like the Beach Boys. This is serfs, S-E-R-F-S. And nobles. %20 of the population were nobles. They controlled the majority of the empire's wealth and land. But the majority of people were serfs. They lived in extreme poverty. They were bound to the land, owned by the nobility, and had very few rights. So here's my question to you. And this is why history isn't just facts and data. The value of studying history, reading literature, studying philosophy, sociology, cultural anthropology. All these disciplines, it's not just for entertainment or memorizing facts. How does 20% of the population control the other 80%? Can anybody tell me? That's millions, and there's millions and millions and millions of more people that are serfs than nobles. How come the nobles are running the show? How? Sue said it. Money and power. And you keep the majority distracted. What do I mean by distractions? You're so busy working. See these books? My grandparents never read these books. Why? On my mom's side, my mother's side of the family, they're all Maltese immigrants. They were poor farmers in Malta, little island under Sicily. My dad's side, poor farmers from Mexico. So both sides of my family, poor farmers. How come my grandparents never read this book? How come they never read any of these books? You don't have time. You're too busy what? Working, trying to survive poverty. You're not working to get ahead. You're working to survive poverty. How many, I know you're in honors class, maybe this isn't a good example, but how many, say we got every kid at Western in the auditorium, say, hey guys, for spring break, who wants to read this book? This is a book on truth. It's a book on philosophy. What would most of the kids say? No. This is how you get a small minority to control millions of people. You condition them to where they think this is boring, this is stupid, this is a waste of your time. My grandparents could never read this. They were too busy trying to survive poverty. They didn't have time to sit down and read a book. Back then, if you walked into somebody's house and they had books, they were rich. Only the rich had time to sit down and read a book. But what Russia was doing was keeping people distracted. How? They had to work their ass off just to survive. And a lot of them didn't even survive. So here's my question. How do you get, here's the only thing that sucks more than being poor. Working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, and then you're still poor. That sucks more than just being poor. How do you get people to do that? French Revolution, Russian Revolution, right now, today, 2019, right here in Southwest Detroit. This applies to all of this. Don't raise your hand. It's a rhetorical question. But how many of you are growing up, or since you were a little kid, you listen to your parents argue about money? Don't raise your hands. I'll raise my hand, because I heard that all the time. Parents arguing about money. How about barely making it? How many of you watch your family work and work and work and work for this little tiny paycheck? How do you get people to do that? What's the point? You're making somebody else rich. If you don't realize you're making somebody else rich by working so much, you don't know. All they got to do is give you a little tiny bit, just enough to let you still get up in the morning. And you'll believe anything. So at the time, you got uneducated peasants. They're working just to survive. Now, when I say poverty in Russia, I'm talking about real extreme poverty. People are starving to death. They're working. They can't even buy food. A book I read by Orlando Figes called The People's Tragedy. Huge book, 800-page book. I had to read it when I was in grad school on the suffering of the Russian people. There's a story of a mother, her two kids are playing outside. They barely had enough food to qualify as a dinner. She went to get her kids to eat. She can't find them. She looks throughout the whole village. She looks in the window of one of the house of her friends. This is one of her friends. They murdered and boiled her children. And she sat there and watched them eat her child. And she banged on the door. They resorted to cannibalism. That's how insane and intense. That's poverty. That's where I'm going to die. I'm so poor. I don't even have food. But you got a system in place where, hey, the Tsar was put here by God. Who are you to question God, bro? Right? You'll get your reward in heaven. There's pastors all over this city. Tell their people that every Sunday. Then after church, they get in their Corvette and they drive to the country club and have a $25 drink and some lobster and some steak. But they tell their congregation, you'll get your reward in heaven. You'll be all right. God wants me to have that Corvette. So the Tsar's like, God put me here. And if you believe that, you can't question that, right? So you got the nobility and you got the serfs. No middle class. Now the contrast is this. You got people resorting to cannibalism. This is the majority of the country. The Tsars are living in luxury. 7 huge palaces throughout Russia. Gourmet food, the best wine, everything. The best clothes, custom made. You got luxury and you got total poverty. Well, eventually, serfdom is abolished in 1861. Life for most Russian peasants didn't improve much, though. Serfdom is almost another word for slavery. It was almost like a legal slavery. You work, you work, you work, you barely have enough to survive. Now that number, 80-20, that's pretty imbalanced, right? Is that kind of weird? How can 20% control the other 80? Guess what's worse number than that? Now this is Russia 100 years ago. Guess what number's worse? Right now, your generation, this country, 2019, today, 1% of this country is running this country. 1%. How in the world can 1% of this country control the country? What are we doing? What's the other 99% doing? How in the world can a small, tiny little group of people control millions? How do you do it? There's a few ways to do it. This is why history is important. One, you gotta keep them distracted. Okay, when I was in Rome, when I went to the Colosseum, I bought this stupid little mouse pad. Why did the Roman Empire build this Colosseum? What did they do in this Colosseum? Pardon me? They entertained. Very good word. Entertained. What went on in here? Gladiators. Very good. Now I'm being a total hypocrite myself. I'm a huge sports fan. But the Roman government built this Colosseum to keep the people distracted. If you're distracted and all of your time is working so you can eat, and the little bit of free time you get, instead of reading books to find out, hey, wait a minute, I'm getting screwed over. My parents got screwed over. My grandparents got screwed over. My great-grandparents got screwed over. This is some bull. Instead of finding that out, go to the Colosseum. Watch the gladiators kill each other. When you get together and talk, instead of talking about a revolution to kick me out, you're talking about gladiators. Distraction. Right?
Anissa Reyes Smith reports to the main office immediately. Anissa Reyes Smith to the main office.
So that's Rome. How about today? 1% of this country is kicking your ass right now. Ain't none of you doing anything about it. How? Why? You're distracted. We're distracted. What am I staring at right now? My stupid phone. Right? We got the internet. Don't get together and talk about how 99% of this country is run by 1%. Don't do that. Let's talk about social media. Let's talk about who's going to fight who after school. Who's sleeping with who. What's the latest gossip? Right? What's going on, whatever, in Hollywood? What's the latest celebrity doing? Celebrities, sports, all this stuff. Smartphones. That's the Roman Colosseum. If you're talking about sports, gossip, fighting, all these distractions, you're never going to know that 1% of this country every day is kicking your ass. You're too distracted. So the Russians start getting a little, as we say now, we think we get woke. You're not woke. That's because you posted something on your Snapchat, you think you're woke. The French Revolution, they broke out guillotines and started cutting people's heads off. When they realized how bad they were getting screwed, while they're suffering, the French nobility is living in luxury. Now, I'm not saying go out and cut off people's heads, but there's a big difference here. The Russians, as uneducated as they were, right, and that's the other thing, keep them uneducated. They don't have time to read this book, and they don't know how to read this book, you're good. That 20% is going to rule forever. There's only a few of them, but they're 10 times smarter than the other 80%. And they got the money. So you keep people chasing that carrot. You don't want to take over the government, bro. Just try to feed your family. You're thinking too big, bro. Stay in your lane. You ain't got time to overthrow me. You feed your kids, bro. Don't worry about what I'm doing. God wants me here. Shut up. Don't worry about it. So the Russians start opening businesses. They start to modernize. Russia's always been agricultural, farming. They're starting to they want to actually be more like who? Detroit. Industrial, right? somebody in your family, maybe it was your generation, your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, somebody in your family either traveled north or west over the Atlantic Ocean to come to Detroit. And the reason they came to Detroit was because of the industry. So Russia wants a middle class. You guys got a middle class now? Do we have a middle class? Right? We're not all rich and poor, right? We have middle. We ain't got the middle we used to, bro. When I was your age, I know I'm old, but I ain't that old. I graduated high school in 1988. If we didn't want to go to college, and I didn't want to go to college, nobody was paying for my college, I'm not getting all those student loans like a sucker. I'm not going to bury myself in a $100,000 debt. I ain't going to college. What do? We graduated Friday. My generation, you don't want to go to college? Cool. You graduate high school on Friday, you party all weekend, and then on Monday, you get on a bus, hop on your bike, or walk down Verner. Where does Verner end? Rouge Plant. Go to the Rouge Plant. As long as you know a guy, I knew a guy. You know a guy in the union? Sweet. $100,000 a year. Full benefits. Retirement. No college. You ain't got to know nothing about nothing. You don't even need to know how to use a hammer. That was a middle class. That's gone. You guys can't do that. And that's just in the grand scheme of things, that's not that long ago. There's a lot of, I could keep here all day, a lot of guys from this neighborhood are retired, my uncles, blue-collar millionaires, never seen the inside of a college. All these jobs that were available. Skilled trades are coming back, though. If you ain't feeling college, go into skilled trades. They're making fat money. No tuition. So I got a job in a factory. Oh, you pay for all my college? Sweet. I went and got 3 degrees. They paid for all of it. Then they gave me $100,000 to leave. They bought me out. Right? Get a job with a good company, right? So I went from poor to middle class. Now I'm a little better than middle class. Me and my wife's income, we got no kids, right? My wife started out poor. So that's like the American dream. You climb higher. Russians didn't have that. You're born poor, you die poor. But now they're getting woke. Now they're saying, hey, we're going to get that middle class. Come on. Yeah. We're going to get a middle class. So now that people are reading books a little bit, getting a little educated, and making a little money, what comes with education and money? At least you know now what? At least you know you're getting screwed. At least you know that 1%, right now 1% is running this country, and we're distracted with phones and sports and stuff. Once you get past the distractions, the Russians are like, now we want what? What's the last 3 words there? We want a voice in the government. Now this totally goes against Russian policy. Why? What did I just say about the Tsar? The Tsar has absolute power. Who put the Tsar in power? Who? Who put the Tsar in power? God. If you can convince all those people, 80% of the country, that God put the Tsar there, they're not going to question anything. What happens is you educate yourself, you get the Wizard of Oz effect. How many people have seen the Wizard of Oz? So what's going on with the Russians at this time is the Wizard of Oz effect. Remember all the smoke and the fire, and people kneel down, right? You kneel down, the smoke and the fire, you see the wizard, you're scared, you're intimidated. Oh, he's so powerful, blah, blah, blah. It takes one person to get some guts and some knowledge. What do? You pull the curtain, it's just some bald guy pulling the strings. Right? So if you get past this, oh, don't worry, you're poor and uneducated, your life sucks, your kids are starving, you'll get your reward in heaven. Now, is that going to happen? Who knows? Nobody knows. But governments love religion because it keeps people contained. And the other thing is you distract them. If you want to break into a house, guy's got 3 pit bulls in the yard. What do? You fight all the pit bulls? Get about 10 pounds of steak, throw it the other way. What are the pit bulls going to do? They're going to go after the steak. While they're eating the steak, you're cleaning out everything in that house. So if the Russians started a revolution and the French started a revolution with the 80-20 imbalance, 20% is controlling 80%, how in the hell are we right now being controlled by 1%? They're throwing you the stake. The stake is your cell phone. Sport. Again, I'm a hypocrite. I got a cell phone. Sports, celebrities, who's sleeping with who, who's going to fight who. While you're busy with gossip and all that stuff, you're getting screwed. The other one is, what's the war here? They're trying to raise their class, right? In this country, everybody's obsessed with race. That's also the stake, the distraction. You should hate that guy because he's black. You should hate him because he's white. You should hate him because he's brown. You should hate him because he's Muslim. You should hate him because he's Christian. And you should hate him because he's Jewish. And you should hate her because she's gay. And you should hate him because he's a Republican. And you should hate him because he's a Democrat. While we're doing all that, that's how you control 99% of the country. You just sit back, count your millions of dollars, eat your $200 steak while these dumbasses kill each other. That's how you distract 99% of the country. Between the cell phones, you think it's a race war, it ain't. You're losing a class war. You're really getting your ass kicked in a class war. You don't even know it. But you think you're fighting a race war. So if you don't even know you're in the fight, how the hell are you going to win it? So this is a template of history. Whether it's right now in 2019, whether it's the French Revolution, whether it's the Russian Revolution. But these revolutions come when people start realizing this is some bull. We're starving to death, and these people are living high on the hog. We're working our ass off to make them richer. And when you start to realize, wait a minute, maybe God didn't put him there. Oh, then it's Wizard of Oz. You start pulling that curtain. Pull that curtain. Someone's got to be smart enough and brave enough to do it. But once they do it, it's just some little bald guy playing you. All right, so again, sorry I can't move, but these kids asked me to. The kids that aren't here wanted me to videotape it, so I can't move. Now this is what you do now. Now what I'm going to tell you ain't in your book, so pay attention. This is what's going to be, all this stuff. I'm giving you test answers for Friday. We're not even using the book. This gets misinterpreted all the time. Bloody Sunday always gets misinterpreted. So pay close attention. What's up? You all right?
Hey, they all downstairs?
Yeah. You got no new work until we come back from break. Just work on the old stuff because you guys are missing a lot of stuff. All right. Bloody Sunday. This is where the Russians are slowly starting to wake up. They want to come see their Tsar. Now, they still believe the Tsar loves them. They still believe the Tsar is appointed by God. Most of them. Some are getting away. I think this whole appointed by God is BS. They're going to come to the Tsar's palace and just a very friendly protest. What's not in your textbook is this. They truly believe the Tsar loves them. He doesn't know they're starving to death. He doesn't know they're resulting in cannibalism. If the Tsar only knew how bad we are suffering, he would help us because he loves us and God put him there. This protest was actually led by a Russian Orthodox priest, Father Gregory, I think his name was. And he comes there in peace. There's no weapons. And they get to the palace. Now, you may have found this in your research. Did you see this in your research? Yeah. You did? Okay. They come to the palace. Well, here's the first problem. The Tsar ain't there. Homeboy had 7 palaces. He's in one of the other ones. He's chilling. They don't know he ain't there. The guards come out. It's a peaceful protest. Now, back then, you got to understand, there's no smarty phones. There's no video games. There's no television. There ain't even radio yet. So the neighborhood kids, this is the most exciting thing they've seen in months. So the neighborhood kids, these people's kids, people in the village, they climb these trees and they get like a bird's eye view of what's going down. They want to see what's going to happen. They think the Tsar is going to come out. So they want to see the Tsar. What your history books don't tell you is this. Nicholas II wasn't even there. 2, the guards tell the protest, you got to leave. You can't be here. It's like, sit in peace, we want to talk to the Tsar. Like, he ain't here, you got to go. So they are given orders just to fire over their heads. Don't hurt anybody. Fire over their heads, and they'll disperse. They're not armed. It's a freaking priest. They're docile. They'll run away. Well, guess what happened? They fired over their heads, and what happened? Put it together. What's over their heads? Huh? Their kids. They accidentally shot these people's kids. And these kids started falling out of the trees dead, their head blown off. Now, you can be an uneducated peasant, have a first grade education, you can believe all this stuff, God put the Tsar there, I'll get my reward in heaven. But man, I don't care how uneducated somebody is, you hurt somebody's child, it's a wrap. That glass ceiling broke right there. You just murdered my kid. All this BS about God put you there, I'll get my reward in heaven, I'm working my ass off and I barely have food, and you got 7 palaces, it's a wrap. In the media, the Russian media, this is where Nicholas gets the name Bloody Nicholas. He wasn't even there, and I'm not defending him, he was an idiot, but he wasn't even there. But the newspapers reported that Nicholas ordered it. Propaganda, right? Because when the kids died, that crowd was no longer docile. They got violent, then they started shooting them. So it turned into a bloodbath. But aside from the obvious immediate tragedy, this breaks this 300 years of Russian rule. Remember, Russia's once, and Nicholas has to go. This changes everything. So you get these docile, uneducated peasants, they're getting a little power. They want Nicholas out. And they're calling for social improvements. They want to get out of the war. There's food shortages. Why are we even in World War I? We shouldn't be in this war. They were this close to a civil war. Really, the reason Nicholas II won in the World War I, he thought it would unite the country. It was a bad move. 9/11, right? You had Democrats and Republicans holding hands on September 12th, the day after. Democrats, Republicans singing God Bless America. Tragedy sometimes brings people together, right? You get a mother and a father, say you have an abusive home, there's a tragedy, all of a sudden people come together, right? That didn't happen. So Nicholas II, great book on this guy, if you like to read, Nicholas and Alexandria by Robert K. Massey. My wife reads mostly fiction. She doesn't like my history books. It's one of the only history books. I got a whole room full of books, history books. She usually doesn't like it. She loved this book. It reads like a novel. It reads like a story somebody made up. His story with his wife and his kids, when his father dies, Alexander III is assassinated, he goes, I never wanted to be the Tsar. This is on your DBQ, isn't it? Where he goes, I never wanted to be Tsar. I don't know how to talk to the ministers. It's exactly what he said as his father, Alexander III, died. They threw a bomb at him. So if a guy's attitude is, I don't want the job, I don't know how to do it, that's not good, is it? That's not good leadership qualities. So this guy, he's a nice guy, but he was just an overprivileged kind of a wuss. I mean, he didn't have the guts to do this job, he didn't have the knowledge to do this job. And they lose a freaking war to Japan. You got the biggest country in the world, and you lose to Japan? So his incompetence is coming through to the people. So they're trying to give these people are learning a little stuff. They're not just saying, hey, God put me here, shut up. They're not buying this anymore. They're getting a little smarter. They want stuff. We have to pacify them. So for the first time, a Russian Tsar, they create the Duma, D-U-M-A. Make sure it's in your notes, it's on your test, a Duma. Long story short, the Duma is supposed to be like our Congress, right? Like, what if Trump didn't have Congress to answer to? He'd really be going crazy, right? What's up? Who? Which? No? No. No. There was an assembly. They might be in the assembly.
Sorry.
No problem. See ya.
They're so attentive that
They're sedated. So Nicholas II, we're getting that Wizard of Oz thing here where people are questioning him. He forms the Duma. It's a body where there's representatives from all over Russia. So the people have a voice now, right? Like the Greeks, like our Senate and all that goes back to ancient Rome and ancient Greece, right? The idea of a Senate, Direct democracy, you guys learn that in civics, right? But here's the problem. It's still BS. The Tsar, in the fine print, he can dissolve the Duma anytime he wants. So the Duma's there. He's supposed to go to him, go listen to them. What do they need? They're supposed to be the voice of the people. But if they piss him off, he can eliminate the Duma at any time. What if Trump could just wake up and go, I eliminate Congress, the Senate and the House? What would happen in this country? Right? Any president. You don't want, I don't care, Democrat or Republican, you don't want any president to have that kind of power. What do we have here? What's it called? Checks and balances, right? So the Duma is kind of a farce. It's kind of fake. It's like it's the sizzle without the steak. And they're hoping that's enough, again, right? Come on, they're Russians. They're dumb peasants. They'll buy it. We're going to give you ground chuck and tell you it's sirloin. You'll believe it. You don't know no better anyway. So they buy it for a minute, but he can dissolve the Duma anytime that he wants. Oh, you want to vote? Okay, you can vote. How's that? What's the fine print on that? Only the wealthy Russians can vote. So was that real democracy? Was that really giving people any... Only if you're rich you can vote. That was the compromise. Sounds crazy. How many of you know that was the deal in this country and this country was founded? Who's read the Constitution? Did you guys know the only people that... Originally, the founding fathers, Alexander Hamilton, Washington... Adams was probably the best guy out of all of them. Adams was a pretty cool guy. Refused to own a slave. But most of them... This country was set up to be run by white, land-owning males. If you read the Constitution. White, land-owning males. If you were a poor male and white, they didn't want you to have any voice either. You weren't going to vote on anything. Senators were appointed. They weren't elected. So it's always about money, even back then. But most of us are consumed with race. Right? The second the race war is over, these guys, the 1% in this country is going to get really scared. Because the second we stop worrying about race and we realize we're all on the same, we're the 99% that's getting screwed by the 1%. We're really all on the same team. We just don't know it. Because they told us we're on separate teams, right? So the French Revolution, Russian Revolution. This is why you have these revolutions. Half the stuff I said today, I could be talking about the French Revolution. I could be talking about 1959 when Fidel Castro and Che Guevara roll into Cuba and they get rid of Batista. I could take the same template over and over and over again. It's always about money, money and power. So Lenin comes in to Russia. The Germans bring him in, the Russian enemy. And the deal is, if we get you into Russia, you're going to miss your own revolution. We'll get you in, we'll protect you. But the second you go in, you got to take out the Romanovs, and you got to get Russia out of this war. He actually does it the other way around. He pulls Russia out of the war immediately. And that's when the United States jumps in 1917. And this entire family is murdered in Ekaterinburg, Russia. Lenin orders the Bolsheviks. They're taken under house arrest. Long after this picture, actually. So he had 4 daughters, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia. You ever heard the Anastasia stories? Used to be a popular cartoon. Nice story. None of it's true. It's all BS. But this is where the story comes from. And the Tsarevich, the young boy, that's why he had 4 girls. He's trying to get a boy. So he gets the Tsarevich. He's supposed to be the heir, but he's a hemophiliac. What is that? Yeah, your blood doesn't clot, or it clots incredibly slowly. So if you're a hemophiliac, like a small little cut, I mean, you'll just keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. A bruise, you could die from a bruise. Especially young kids. How many times a kid fall, right? Running into stuff, right? So he was very delicate. When Nicholas was, and this is how, it's an amazing story. It's very strange and tragic, but it's hard to feel sorry for the guy because while he had 7 palaces, Russians were starving to death. And he wasn't very vicious or mean. He was just really dumb. When you come from privilege, you have the luxury of being an idiot, right? There's a lot of wealthy people that don't really know much about anything, But when you have privilege, you can go through life an idiot and it's okay. So he was very naive. He wasn't in touch with the Russian people. And did you guys know who this is? Did you do a little research on him? Come across your research? This is a weird story. This is a weird, creepy, and I mean creepy guy. Most of the stuff he did, you're not going to read in your textbook. He was thought to have like some kind of magical powers, right? Again, you get people believing in this stuff, you can get away with anything. So the Tsarevich here, Alexei, this hemophilia thing is kind of hopeless. There's no cure. Nicholas II is like, how is he ever going to become the Tsar? He's so weak. He's not going to live long. What are we going to do? So while he's losing the war to little Japan, he's on the front lines, Rasputin weasels his way into the palace. And he tells the Tsarina, Nicholas's wife, Alexandria, I can cure the boy. And, you know, when people are desperate, there's no hope, you're more entitled to believe, you know, BS, right? So they bring him in. People from his village are writing letters like, this guy is a rapist, pedophile, drunken, drug addict, like the worst person in the history of people. And they're trying to explain, like writing letters, like, you don't want this guy anywhere near your kids or in the palace. Rumors start that he's running the country because Nicholas is at the war with Japan. There's cartoons. He used to do this thing. The boy would fall or something, and he would tell everybody, everybody leave the room. Everybody leave the room. And he'd just sit there and stare at the kid for 3 hours. Hemophiliac, the best thing to do is don't touch him. Don't move him. Like when you cut yourself and it stops bleeding in like a minute, a hemophiliac needs like 3 or 4 hours for that, right? So you just sit there, don't do nothing. Jesus Christ. Speaking of Rasputin. Funny you walk in, I'm talking about Rasputin.
Mr. What do you do? Religious something?
Yeah, you're going to love this part. You walked in a good part. So he's at the palace with the Tsarina. He's pretending he's curing a hemophiliac Tsarevich. And they get a plan. The Romanovs like, he's making us look bad. It's all, you know, political cartoons go out in the papers. So this whole concept, you know, this is when the Tsar being chosen by God and God appointed him. The Russians are starting to see through this crap. And they're starting to realize this ain't right. We need a piece of the pie here. They're starting to realize they're getting screwed over, right? So they plan to kill him. Another Romanov said, we're going to have a party. Now this guy was in drugs, alcohol. He's a total pervert too on top of that. So they give him everything, they tell him everything he wants to hear. He's coming to this insane party where like anything you could possibly think of, yeah, they're going to do that. And there's all kinds of drugs, all kinds of people, all kinds of everything. So he can't wait for this party. Now there's always this mystique that he has some kind of spiritual powers. You know, the people that don't buy into that, yeah, BS. So he gets there and they give him enough poison to kill a horse. And they give him his vodka, he starts drinking, and he's fine. And they're looking at each other like, he should be dead by now. He drank enough poison to kill a horse. And he gets up, stands up. He's about 6'7". He's huge, especially for Russia this time. I mean, 6'7", pretty tall now, but even he's like a giant. He stands up, and they're like, oh my God, he really does it. He should be dead. So he starts walking towards him. This guy stabs him. And he picks the guy up and throws him across the room. And he's still coming at him. It's like Terminator stuff. So what they do next? They shot him.
Shot him in the head, right? Forehead.
Shot, not yet. They shot him in the body. They shot a body in his chest. They shoot him. He's still crawling after him. He ends up chasing the Romanov that set up this so-called party. Chases him outside. All he's got is his robot. You know how cold it gets here? It's colder than that in Russia. They shoot him again. He falls down. They bash him over the head with a shovel. They wrap him in chains and they throw him in a river that's frozen. He falls through the ice. They found his body 2 miles down the river days later. And you know how he died? He drowned. He had water in his lungs. That means he was still alive after the poison, the shooting, the stabbing, and getting his skull bashed in with a shovel. So he survived that. until they threw him in. Now this guy is the guy you don't know about, that you should know about. How many people here have heard of Stalin, Joseph Stalin? Right, World War II, you always hear. How many people heard of Leon Trotsky? Okay. Oh, you did? Who? Where? Huh? Animal. Very good. Animal Farm. Excellent. Trotsky was Lenin's right-hand guy. You know that guy you did the biography on? Bald guy, goatee? This was his right-hand guy. He's an intellectual. When Lenin dies, I think 1923, 1924, he wanted Trotsky to take over. Stalin was just like the muscle, right, of the Bolsheviks. Stalin was never considered to be that smart, but Stalin was very street smart. This is where a street guy beats an intellectual every day of the week. So Trotsky looked down on Stalin. He was very condescending towards Stalin. Stalin was just like the, dumb musclehead. Stalin slowly starts making friends. When Lenin is dying, and then he dies, Stalin, in the middle of the night, hey, Trotsky, all those books you read, yeah, that's really cute. Get on this train, bro. He sends a squad over there, put a gun to his head, and they force him on a train, and they kick him out of the country. Why didn't you just kill him? Because you would have made him a martyr. What's a martyr? And that doesn't always have to be a religion. When you die for a cause, and people will just worship at your feet, and so instead of killing Trotsky, you create 100 other Trotskys. Your death will motivate others to rebel. It's this whole what we've been talking about the whole time, right? When the 99% of this country realize they're getting screwed by the 1%, maybe we'll do something about it, or maybe we won't. We'll just play with our phones. We'll see. But this is why you get revolutions. So where does he send Trotsky? Ironically, anybody know? Send him to Mexico. Trotsky ends up in Mexico, and he's there for decades, and he keeps writing articles. Stalin's this, Stalin's that, Stalin's a jerk. And he's reading this stuff. These publications are coming into Russia, Soviet Union. So what does Stalin do? It's 20 years later, Stalin's well cemented. He's got all the power. Since Trotsky can't just stay in exile and shut up, he puts a hit on him. So Stalin sent a hit squad to Mexico, and his button man puts an ice pick through Trotsky's skull and kills him. He's still buried in Mexico to this day. There was some talk about bringing his body back to Russia. Bro, when you come in late, you just come in and sit out. That's it. I know you're at the thing. There you go. So that's why you don't hear about Trotsky. He should have been the heir to Lenin. You should know all about him. Stalin has him exiled to Mexico. Years later, he has him killed. He's buried in Mexico this day. So that's a 3-hour lecture on the Russian Revolution in 40 minutes. You all right? All right, man. Don't kill nobody. All right. Any questions? What do you guys think about that? Besides, I want you to get an A on your Russian Revolution test. That's cool. But besides that, do you see the similarities like French Revolution, Russian Revolution? How can reading history help you now? They had a revolution because 20% of the rich were running the country. Once they figured that out, they stood up and they fought. We got 1% running this country right now. What are we doing? Okay, so your test. I'll finally shut up. Your test is going to be the do now, my lecture. There's Quizlet flashcards for you on Edmodo. Study them. I'm going to literally cut and paste them and put them on your test. That's going to be that's going to be about half of your test. The other half's going to be my lecture. Your lecture notes and those flashcards equals a test. Capiche? Capiche. Work on your DBQs. If you have any questions, let me know. I am going to start grading your old work. Did everybody turn in their work from Monday? I'm going to start grading that right now. Baseball? Yeah. You know what we're doing? You good?
Yeah. All right.